All right, welcome to another episode of O Dark 30. Tonight's guest is Mike McCarty, 25 years, Branson Fire, retired about a month ago, just about a month
Just
ago,
a little
right
bit
around
over a
there.
month ago, yeah.
Not sure what to do with his life right now. So if anybody's got any suggestions, toss them out. Uh, welcome, Mike. Good to see you,
Thank
dude.
you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Good to be
this
here.
this will be fun. This will be fun. So 25 years, dude.
I
That's a
know.
long time. That's a long ass time.
Yeah, I know it is, but it didn't seem that long until it just was that long. I don't know if that even makes sense. It felt like the years I just barely, everything was just barely rolling, and then next thing like we were talking earlier, next thing you know, I'm this old guy that's with all these young guys, and I've been here forever, and I've seen all of this change that they don't know about. I've been there when it was squat, and now I I feel like I grew up through that department really from my early 20s until now, 50, almost 55 years old. So
What what took you to Branson to begin with?
to begin with, I ended up in Branson. This is kind of a crazy story because I went to school, College of the Ozarks, right? So
Like almost
uh,
half of the other people in the department.
yeah, and half of us did. So I graduated high school. I was like, I had no plans. I had no college lined up, nothing. I went to work for a construction company hanging red iron steel. I did that for the summer and the fall. And about, 4 or 5 months into that, as I'm up on top of this steel building, and I actually, this tooth right here that's busted out, still from that. I was up on a purlin, and I had my saddlebags with my wrenches because I'm putting bolts in, and I was one bolt short, and a guy on down, I was about, I don't know, 40 feet up. He threw me this bolt, right? I'm like, I need one more to finish off. And I held my hands up, and it went right between the hole in my hands and hit me in the face, knocked my tooth out. So, well, it didn't knock it out, broke it in half. So I spit my teeth out, got my bolt in there, tightened it up, and I was like, I probably need to figure out something else in life because I don't like it. So I applied to College of the Ozarks, the only place I knew that I didn't have any money. My parents didn't have any money to send me anywhere. I didn't have any money. So I was like, I guess that's the place where if you're poor, you can go to school there. And I went.
Right. And you were
So
living in Arkansas at the time when you applied?
Well, I was living in Mountain Grove, Missouri. That's where I
Oh, okay.
graduated high
Okay.
school. Now, my family's from Calico Rock, Arkansas. So, like, I've half my life has been spent there. And that's honestly, since retirement, I spend a lot of time there. We got a farm down there. So I spend my time fishing and hunting and enjoying the things that I haven't got to enjoy for all these years because, as well as I do, how hard it is to get away whenever you're so wrapped up in work
For sure.
and our job in particular. It's hard to, have weekends, holidays, things like that. You just work all the time. And so, but yeah, I applied to College of the Ozarks, accepted me, and I started in January of 1991 and I was an aviation student. I wanted to fly airplanes, right? Everybody wants to do that. So, but they didn't really have a flying program. They did, but it not a degree. So I went there and I got signed up to start flying. And they have an aviation maintenance program, A&P program. I'm like, I'll do that. So I spent my time at College of the Ozarks doing A&P work. I went through, got my airframe power plant license, got my pilot's license, was flying, working on airplanes, enjoying the aviation life, working around airplanes, working around airports, and when I graduated there, a lot of guys were like, "Well, we're going to go on to UCM now." It was CMSU then in Warrensburg, so it's UCM now, which my daughter graduated from there actually. So I went up there and got a master's degree in aviation safety. So that was a kind of a segue into the aviation world of could be management. A lot of guys went into crash investigation, which is what we studied mostly. Some guys went to aircraft manufacturers like Raytheon or Textron, Cessna, and we kind of scattered out. And oddly enough, I got hired back by the airport manager in Branson, Joe Burnell, Point Lookout. He was the airport manager there. He had known me through school. I was graduating, and he calls me up and he's like, "Hey, would you be interested in a job?" And of course, I'm about to graduate college a second time, and I'm like, "Yeah, I need a job because I'm broke and I've got student loans." I'm like, "Sure." So he hooked me up with a company that was doing some work and going to do some airport management at Point Lookout. So I met with them. They interviewed me a couple of times. The first time I ever wore a suit to an interview, and I had to answer all these technical questions and stuff. So I was nervous, but they hired me as an operations manager, and that was my first aviation gig. Long ways from fire department, right? Long ways from firefighting. So I'm into this, and we're ramping up to get some airline service, ramping all this stuff up, and I'm working with these guys that they hired also. Charlie Douche is one of them. Great dude, um, lifelong fireman. Has traveled the world as a contract medic. In fact, he spent a lot of years in Afghanistan, Iraq, and the last I knew, Charlie was actually married to a Russian chick living in Russia. So I don't know, but Charlie's got to be close to 70 now. But back then, he's like, "Hey, we got to get you boned up on firefighting." And I was like, "What for? I'm an airplane dude, right?" I don't. He's like, "No, everyone at an airport has to be an ARF person, so airport rescue firefighter." And I'm like, I know zero about it. I know nothing about this. So they had some old air packs that they scabbed from somewhere, some old silver suits that they had got from, because the company I work for also runs Teterboro, New Jersey airport, and some other big airports. So that we got all like their hand me down crap they shipped to us. And Charlie gives me this 1 day school on how to wear an SCBA and not be claustrophobic in it, because I'd never done that before. And then they put us on an airplane, sent me to Dallas to ARF training in Dallas Fort Worth. And I get down there and I'm with all these guys that are they're career firemen, right? They're career guys that are going through this 5 day training at this ARF facility, and I show up and I know absolutely zero. I barely can know how to get the air turned on this air pack. And then they throw us into these big fuel fires and all this stuff, and I remember I'd close my eyes and just say, "I'll be right close to the guy next to me, and I hope he knows how to keep things going." That was my introduction to fire service, right? So I, I came back from that certified as an ARF guy,
It
right?
was
And
literally trial by fire.
it was literally trial by fire, literally. But now I'm certified. So, working at the airport, I'm like, I need to know more about this than what I mean. I know enough to get myself killed. That's all I know. I'm driving this ARF truck around, and I can get on some bunker gear and an air pack kind of. I mean, I'm not. I have no formal training in this, so I joined. At the time, we had a fire academy here called Tri Lakes Fire Academy. And so I just was like, on my off time from the airport, I'm like, I'm gonna get in the fire academy. So I did, and I got all my certifications and everything, and I decided that I kind of like this. Right, it's kind of fun. So fast forward 5 years, 5 years of me still training. I went to Western. I'm like, "Hey, I've got this training now. Could I help out a little bit? I have no commitments. I work full time fire at the airport." So they're like, "Yeah." So I spent a few years doing some stuff with Western. Running some calls, getting a little experience, and then the contract ended at the airport here. And my company, which was American Port Services, it was Amports and then American Port Services, what they changed to. So then they kind of were shutting down, right? But they didn't let me go. They offered to move me to Teterboro, New Jersey, and work at the airport there. So, Levi, you know me. Do you think I'd fit in Teterboro, New Jersey? I mean, my mind was just swimming. I'm like, I can't live in New Jersey. I don't. I'm this Ozarks mountain kid that grew up in the woods. I hunt
You
and I
you
fish,
talk
and
way too slow to move to the East Coast.
yeah, I'm like, these people wouldn't get me. So I'm struggling. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I've got just a couple of months to figure things out before the contract ended. And I had to make some decisions whether I was going to move with the company. And just so happens Branson Fire Department had a testing. And I'm like, what the hell? I'll just try it. And I went and tested with the Branson Fire Department. I did not get hired, but I got on a list, right? So I made the list, the infamous list that everyone gets on. So I got on the list. So a couple of months go by. I'm right at the end of my time there. It's coming up into December, and Chief Sparks, Carl Sparks, and I don't know if you know Chief
Did yeah
Sparks.
yeah
You've met him.
I
You
knew Chief
you
Sparks.
didn't really work under him, but you met him.
Uh-uh.
So Chief Sparks calls me in December, and he's like, "Hey, do you want a job?" And I was like, "Just so happens I need a job, so that would be great." And in January 1st of that year, I walked in. My orientation was this is where your bunk is. Here's your some bunker gear. Um, you're a fireman on this engine, and go. There was no, there was no,
Ready to go.
there was no nothing. There was no 10-week probationary, uh, all the stuff you go through, and you've gone through that where it's just regiment.
Yeah.
It was nothing. I was just the first day I was the fireman on that crew. So I had decent guys. Ben Bonner was my engineer at the time, so Ben took good care of me. I worked for Paul Harkins, which I don't know if you remember
Yeah, I
Paul,
remember
or did you
Harkins.
work
Yeah.
with Paul?
Didn't work with him, but I knew him.
Yeah. But you know the name.
Yep. Oh
So
yeah.
he was a
Oh yeah.
very interesting cat. But so they kind of helped me out. And then Dave Etz. And I tell everybody, even at my retirement ceremony, or it wasn't my retirement ceremony, it was my last captain's meeting before I retired. So we have these big captain's meetings, right? It's kind of a annual thing. And I'm in this room and I'm looking at all these captains around the room that used to work for me. They were my firefighter, they were my engineer, and now they're captains. Now I'm sitting in a room full of guys that worked with me, and they're all captains. And one of the questions was asked, it was something to do with what brought you into Branson Fire, or what made you who you are with Branson Fire. And I said that day, I was like, Dave Etz made me who I am. He's the one that really taught me the way of the fire service. He taught me the tradition. He taught me the camaraderie, the loyalty that you have to have, things like that, and really took me under his wing, and it made me a better fireman. It made me who I was. Just so happened as the promotional processes go, we worked together. He ended up being my engineer. We worked closely together for a long time because back in the early days, firefighters and engineers worked close together because you ran all EMS calls together. The
Right.
captain didn't go with you to EMS calls. So it was Dave and I run, and you know how many EMS calls we ran? All of
Yeah.
them.
Oh yeah.
So Dave and I would be alone in these, our rescues, which we had a mini pumper, a little 1 ton, had a little water on it, some hose, a little mini pumper. We used to call ourselves Johnny and Roy because we would run all over town in this little, truck like what they drove on rescue, and we're running around and doing all this stuff, and it was great. It really developed me as a fireman. Dave did, and Dave's got a hard work ethic,
He
and
does.
you've worked with him,
Oh yeah.
Dave's a
I
dude that's
loved
got
working for
drive,
Dave.
and he's also got a lot of knowledge, and
He
he had a
does.
lot of knowledge even back then. He went to uh, Fire Academy in California and was uh, um, a firefighter, Forest Service firefighter out in California. So he came here with a lot of experience, and he taught me the ways. Right, I always say he was like my Jedi teacher. Right, so he taught me the ways of the fire service, and he did. Uh, we ended up off of different crews. I ended up promoting before Dave did, even though he was there whenever I got there. And then Dave ended up being my engineer. I promoted, and all of a sudden Dave's my engineer, and I'm like, well, this is weird because we hung out every day together. We ate dinner most of the evenings together with our wives. We camped together, we canoed together, we drank together, we did everything together. Dave and I did. So that was interesting. Whenever all of a sudden now that I'm his boss, captain, but I credit him with developing me as a fireman, and I'm a better person because of Dave. I got to tell you. So
Yeah.
he taught me the ways.
Dave was I loved working for Dave because he was a no nonsense kind of a guy, but he had that super laid back California attitude,
Uh,
and he could be your
100%
captain, but
California.
he was just
He's got the look
one of
and
the dude.
everything.
Yeah, he was just one of the dudes. He was just
Yeah,
one of the guys. He'd always been that way, and I enjoyed working
yeah.
with him, my time with him.
Yeah, me too. And I still hang out with Dave. Not as much as we used to, but he hunts with me every year. He deer hunts with me every year. We from time to time do some fishing trips together now, and we're actually as we get older. There was a period in time, and life does that to you, right? You're together with somebody for a long, and then there's a period of time where kids, family, things happen, and you grow apart a little bit. Well, I
Right.
think we've reached that point in our lives where we've grown back together, and so Dave and I are more on that same plane again. And shoot, we sit down and visit and shoot the shit, and we 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 get each other. We're in the same mindset. And he's also feeling the old man syndrome right now too at work because we work we we work with a generation of guys that are they grow up with video games. They grow up with cell phones and all the electronic gadgets that, I didn't come from that era. Hell, I went to college all the way through grad school, Levi, and I never had a computer. I typed everything on a typewriter. And you know what Google was to me? There was no Google. I went to the library and I
You went to the
sat and I read
library.
books. That's how I had to learn, you know. And now I watch these, even my own kids, everything, all information is at their beck and call now.
I know.
Whereas back in the day, you had to hunt things. You had to really research. Research was a real thing. You had to really research in order to accomplish those things. And Dave's from that era too. So we always just say we're working with all these kids, and uh, it's been a strange, the latter half of my career was interesting. Working with as many young guys as I did.
Right. Right. So when you started there, what do you have like a memory of? How do I put this? Like a realization of this is it. This is what I want to do.
I did. I was probably because really in the beginning it was a job. It was just a place I needed to have a job, right? And so, but I remember early on, within my first year, having, you talk about tough calls, and it was a call. We had a drowning, and it was a 6-year-old girl, right? So we go to this swimming pool over off of Wildwood, and we get there. We're the first people there. The family's all freaked out. They're from St. Louis. Excuse me. They had drugged this little girl out of the pool, but she had drowned. She no heartbeat, no nothing. And I remember, your training kicks in. It's what we do, right? And you just get in there. We start compressions. We're trying to dry her off so that we can get, AEDs applied and stuff like that. And I remember doing compression CPR on that girl uh, for an hour. We did it. I was there when the ambulance got there. I continued. I never stopped, and I rode to the hospital. And in the hospital room, the emergency room, I still did compressions until a doctor finally called that. And I remember that shaking me. It's one of those things, and you're like, I just watched a little girl die, and I need to be the guy that is there to help people do through these times. And the next one, I hope, is not going to be end like this. And maybe I can even do better. It gave me drive, and it actually gave me some purpose in the whole. Before then, it was riding around the fire truck, and fires are a dime a dozen. You don't fight fires all the time. You do. It's all fun and games and high fives and things like that. But it was the interaction that you have with people in their worst times that made me realize that this was I was probably meant to do this. This was a thing meant for me to do.
Right. So that's so crazy because it's usually like one of those you catch a job town with your boys. It's a
Uh-huh,
rager. You're interior,
uh-huh.
and that's the moment that people are like, yeah, this is the shit I want to do. But yeah, that's such an interesting take on it. That yours was something completely different than what I've heard from other
It was
people.
just a dramatic. It was a
Right.
dramatic instance for me.
Yeah. And it does. It triggers people in a different way that a lot of people that have never done what we've done have no idea
Oh yeah.
about that. They're like, well, you don't make shit for money and you've got to live away from your family all the time. It's like, yeah, but you don't understand I've always called it, because I've done the military. I've been a
Hmm.
firefighter. I'm a cop now, and
Hmm.
it's the desire to serve
Hmm.
that once you kind of get that bug, it's hard to get rid of it. And there's a lot of people who are like, oh, well, you can make better money doing this. It's like, yeah, but I would hate my job, and I would hate the people that I'm working with. That I love that. That's a great answer. I love that answer. And it's probably one of the best ones I've got out of somebody of why they're doing
You know, it's one of
what they
those
did.
things that it gives you the drive to serve other people, and you go, listen, this was a bad outcome, but you know what? For that one bad outcome, I've had an awful lot of good outcomes in my career, Levi, and where we've saved a lot of lives, and those were the things that keep you moving, keep you motivated, and keep you going, and every time you do that, you go, and that's why I do this, and that's why I do this, and it really the money's not the thing. Because I sure as hell didn't get rich being a fireman. But it was those are the things that drive you
So
to
let's
be
get to
better.
that. Like, what kept you showing up every third day for 25 years?
Beginning, it was to learning, but I was that whole sponge of I want to know more, I want to know more, I want to know more. You know, I go to rescue academies, go to every kind of EMS thing. You know, EMT. Of course, we become EMTs, and we do all this training because you're trying to further your knowledge. And then there's a point in time in your career where that changes a little bit. I mean, you're still always trying to further your knowledge, but now you're about helping other guys further their knowledge. And that's what kept me coming back is helping other guys and trying to get other guys to that point. You know, you always say you get to this peak in your career and then it kind of goes down a little bit. But I don't know if it ever went down for me as much as it just changed. It was a paradigm change where now my focus was on helping other guys, trying to give some of this I've got in my head, all this crap I've got in my head, and give it to somebody else. You know, you were trying to pass that torch. Um, and, I got to the point where I thought, my time here, I've probably done as much as I'm going to do, and it's just my time. The last couple of years were a little rough. Just it starts getting to me. It started getting old being away from family all the time, and you have family issue. You trust me, I've been down the road. I've had one divorce, and I was near another divorce at one point in time. So I mean, the fire service, military, everything. It's hard on families because we dedicate so much of our lives to other people and away and all of that time we spend away from our family. Sorry, my dog's down there losing its mind.
So
Away from our families that it becomes detrimental, and it's hard. And I got to a point where I was like, I need to get back focused on my family, and I need to all this time that I take away, I need to I need to spend more time with my family. I want half my kids. I got one that's still in high school, but three of them have already went through high school and college before So now I feel bad sometimes. I feel like I missed out on some stuff sometimes just because sometimes work was more important than family, and it shouldn't have been, but it got that way sometimes.
so I mean the next question could be like with retirement as well, because it's like the ultimate long call, but how do you deal with the quiet after a long call or after a hard call? And with retirement being, like the ultimate long call, how are you dealing with retirement now? We got into a little bit before we started recording, but we had a lot of hard calls. Branson, we ran more medical calls in Branson than we did anything else, and a lot of them didn't go well, mostly because the people were, of that generation that were a lot older
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, a lot of drugs, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you deal with the long call, the quiet after the long call?
The quiet after long. For years, a lot of dwelling in my head. You know, I try to talk with guys when we're still being on duty, right? And we have those calls, and I mean, my brain just bounces around lots of them. I've had 6-month-old babies die, in my hands. I've had 16-year-old kid in a car wreck that I watched him take his last breath because he tore his aorta. So there was really nothing we could do for him. He just died. The motorcycle kid that I had that hit a guardrail, and I'm talking to him, and he's telling me, he goes, I need blood, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm like, we're doing the absolute best we can for you. And then to watch when you watch people die, it affects you. It it changes you. And I think too much of my career I spent bottling things up, and that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
I can probably attribute that to a lot of things that have gone sideways in my life over the years because I bottled things up. Now, later on, as we did it, I felt more inclined to, in my later years, to spend more time just talking with the guys, even if it wasn't talking about the call, but just talking and just having that open conversation. And if they have, it inevitably comes up, and then we can talk about. We talk about things that happened right, things that happened wrong. What could you have done? Maybe you couldn't have done anything. In a lot of instances, there's just nothing you can do.
Right.
That's the way the cards are dealt. But I spent too much time dwelling on things. Probably I had to learn to release that without being detrimental and harmful to myself, which I probably was in my younger days. I was probably more harmful to myself because I didn't. But I'm not a super emotional person, so I didn't have cry sessions and crap like that. Shit, I bottled things up and move on to the next call, and sometimes it catches up with you. There would be times that you'd have nightmares and things about things that I had to be a part of that you're like, damn. But you know, eventually it helps to talk to people about it, and but it took me a while. It took me a long time in life to realize that talking about it's not wrong. And it actually gives you some relief. It did me,
Right.
you know.
It's a
There was times that
standing
I didn't
thing
want to
on
talk about it. What's that?
it's a standing thing on some of my episodes that the people that bottled it up for so long, and then they're like, it was, if you talked about it, you're weak and everybody's going to make fun of you. And they all, like, there's a lot across the board with fire, military, police and stuff that are starting to get away from that now.
Yeah,
Like, they're like, y'all need to talk about this because y'all
yeah,
are messed up in the head, and if you don't talk about it, it's going to get worse. So
but yeah. But 20, 30 years ago, people that wasn't the culture. The
right.
culture was
Yeah.
that's your job. Shut the hell up and move forward.
Yeah.
March on. You got work to do. We don't have no time to dwell on this shit, and shit happens, and you move on. That doesn't make it any better for the person that's still bottling it up inside, but
Exactly.
you just learn to keep it suppressed. So a lot of times to your detriment. I'm thankful that I've had strong support dudes that I can talk to. The Dave Etzes of the world.
Oh yeah.
There's different guys out there that we would sit and have a whiskey and talk about those shit calls and talk through it on our own, away from work.
Right.
And it made things better. It ended up making things better. But there's other avenues for help now that hopefully younger guys getting into it now see those, and I think it's at the forefront more now than it was people understand that you have to go through that. You need to accept some help, and it's not a sign of weakness at all. It's not a sign of meekness. It's totally accepting that we all need a little bit of encouragement from time to time to keep us sane in our head.
Now, do you ever have one of those? You don't get paid enough for one of these.
Oh yeah, those are usually the shit calls, and I'm talking about poop. Yeah, there's the poops, the pukes. Those are the ones I call that I don't get paid enough for this.
I
I
couldn't. When you
never
show up
fought a
to the
fire
nursing
that I
home
was.
and there's
Yeah,
a skid mark from the bed to the bathroom, and I couldn't do those.
yeah. The turd on the floor that's wrapped around some old lady's toe that Steven's stepping in and squishing it, and we're slipping and sliding, or naked in the bathtub. I made Steven. Steven Parrish, so I made him get. We get on this call and there's this woman and she's in a bathtub, right? It's in a hotel. We get there. It's 11 o'clock at night, and I'm usually irritated in the middle of the night anyway because I've probably been asleep for a little bit, and it's just the routine of going to sleep and waking up and going to sleep and waking up. And so it's one of those wake ups, and I get there and she's in a room. They can hear her hollering for help. Of course, she got the door locked, so we got to jam the locks to get in. And she's this 400-pound woman in this corner, the jacuzzi tubs that are like a corner jacuzzi tub. And she's sitting in it with her legs spread out there, no water, and naked. And she's like, I knew this was a bad idea. I'm here by myself, and I thought it would be fun to sit in this jacuzzi, and I can't get out. And I looked at Steve and I was like, get in the tub with her. You're going to have to get her out. You know,
Go
rank
on,
has its
Steven.
privilege. So at some point, there's a lot to say about it. Rank has its privilege. So I got Steven back behind there, hoisting on her. We're pulling from the front. He's picking up from the back. We're trying to throw some towels over. And you're like, shit. But, you run things like those, you laugh about them now. Back then, they're like, oh, what am I doing here? There's things like that. But all of the poops and the pukes early on, stood that better. Like it didn't bother me as much. The older I got, the worse it bothered me, like the smells. And I'd be like, yeah, there's times I'd walk to a door and go, nope. I just turn around and I was like, all right, you guys go in there. If you need help, I'll be here. But go in there and handle this because
I used to do that to Matt and Nate all the time because I couldn't handle the smells. We'd walk into
yeah,
one of them
I'd be
rooms.
like, nope.
I'd walk in, hit the threshold, and turn right back around. I was like, I'll be outside. I will get
Yeah.
whatever you guys need, but I'm not coming in there. Sorry.
Yeah, first time somebody pukes on you and you just turn around and look at them, and go, man, puke right back on them. You know that the smells get you then. Yeah, ain't no good. Ain't no good.
No. I always like to ask a question for the firefighters though, and I already know the answer to this because I used to try to pick up calls or pick up shifts to work with you.
Huh?
And this question is, who's the best cook at the station? And I already know the answer to that one. And he's the one giggling right now.
I consider myself the best cook at the station. It's what I did. I mean, I come from a long line of country cooks, Levi. So I made things that are country meals, stick to your ribs, the biscuits and gravies, all of those things. And
Oh, dude,
I
breakfast on your shift, it was the best. And you
I
felt
enjoy
fat
cooking
all
for
day
people.
long.
And honestly, that's a stress reliever for me. Even at home now, when I cook for my family, and I've always cooked for my family, cooking is almost a release for me. It's a stress reliever for me, and developing recipes and stuff like that, and making good food. I like to see people enjoy eating. That brings me joy. If I can make something that tastes good and everybody likes it, then it makes me happy. So. Uh, I don't know that I'm best cook. I just know that I like to cook, and I never from the beginning. I never made any of my guys. I just always was the guy that cooked.
That was the weirdest thing the first time I worked with you on a shift. They're like,
Uh-huh.
we're gonna make dinner tonight. So I started like getting shit ready to make dinner. They're like, no, you
No,
you get the hell out of the kitchen. Like,
Yeah.
what? I'm the new guy. I'm supposed to do this. They're like, no, 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 no. You don't
Well, see,
understand. You're
that's
in
the
Mike's world now.
micromanager in me, and I'm not that way except for in the kitchen. And in the kitchen, I'm a micromanager. I'm analyzing what people are doing all the time and being like, yeah, yeah, no, no, wait, no, just go down the room and let me do this because this is just what I
Don't
do.
even
This is
touch it.
what I do.
Yeah,
And most of
that
my
was the
crews were
weirdest thing for
okay with
me.
that.
That was the
After
weirdest
a
thing for
short
me.
period of time, they get okay with it, and they're like, "Sure, hell yeah, you do all the cooking, and we'll
You
do all
do
the
all the
eating."
cooking. We will clean the shit out of this place later.
Yep. Oh, there you go. See, I can cook, and then I always had guys to clean. I come home and I cook, and my wife's like, "Fuck you."
Oh, you made the
No,
mess. You clean it up.
she does good with it, but she's like, "You made that mess. You clean that mess up."
So other than
It's in the
leaving Mike alone
firehouse,
in the
she said.
kitchen, what's another good unspoken rule of the station?
For me, when you're in the bunk room, the lights are off. That's my
That's
unspoken
a good
rule.
one. That is a good
Bunk
one.
rooms for sleeping, day rooms for lights on and reading or whatever else. And we had that. That was a thing with me. Well, with my crews, and probably from early on in my career, when I had some captains that liked to. They had TVs by their bunks and shit like that, and you try to go to sleep, and they're playing music and shit. Nah, bunk rooms for sleeping, lights off, night bunk rooms for sleeping. Whenever you go in there, that's the only sleep we get, and it might only be a couple hours, but those couple hours I want to sleep, and I don't want to have to try to put myself to sleep listening to somebody else giggle or whatever else. So that was one of my things. I really didn't have to tell too many people after they would figure it out in the very first shift. The bunk room. If you've been around Brian Rinke, he'll tell you that too. Bunk rooms for sleeping, day rooms for everything else. You
He
want to read, you
absolutely
want to
will
watch
tell you.
TV, you want to do anything else, you go in there, you stay in that other room. When you come back here, you go to bed. That's what you do, and the lights stay off. We want it dark and cold.
Yeah. Brian always had his bed was right up there by the front door, and so
Yeah.
he'd get on you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We've had to have some come to Jesus meetings with people about these are the rules and this is the expectations. Other than that, do your chores and pull your weight, right? And that's the other rule of the fire station. And honestly, that's where those I've run across younger guys before that they haven't. It's a work ethic thing, right? So they're not used to. They're used to when you get a dude that's 20 years old and just stepped into the fire service straight out of the academy and he lived with mom and dad. He doesn't always know that there's a lot of chores need done every day. And I ain't your mama and I ain't taking care of your chores. Everybody's got duties. Everybody's got chores. Everybody's got things that need to be done in the course of your day. So your job's to do it with everybody and not sit back and wait for someone to do it for you.
Right.
I had good crews though, man. I can't complain. I've never had a bad crew. I've always had really good dudes. I managed to make it through a whole career, 20 years as a captain, and having crews that were always hard workers, sharp guys, forward thinkers, and that's a big thing with me too. I like people that can make decisions and that they can be
Think
given a
outside of the
direction
box.
and they can handle themselves in that direction. I don't want to hold people's hands and I don't want to micromanage them. I want them to, other than the kitchen,
Other than the
but I
kitchen.
want them to be able to handle themselves. And I've always had just good, smart dudes that could work. I just got lucky. I know there's guys that have had guys that are just like, yeah, this dude's dumber and shit, and I don't know how to fix him. Fortunately, I never got those guys. So I think I coasted through not getting those dudes.
That's because I was never assigned to your crew, so you
Nah,
got
you're
lucky.
smart, man. I loved working with you. No,
Oh, it was
you're a
fun.
good egg, and I loved working with you. And there's a lot of guys on other shifts. Station two had there's guys on either side of us. Different, you were on a different shift from me, but you pick up the guys that are like the good dudes, that are the
Right.
solid dudes, and you
Well,
always
I mean,
enjoy working with
there's
those
such a
dudes.
good crossover between. It's not like you guys would show up in the morning. And we're like, all right, peace out. Truck's ready.
Yeah,
Talk to you later, and we'll see you in
yeah.
2 days. No, we would hang out, have coffee. We're
Have
talking.
coffee.
Like it
Yeah.
would be like an hour unless you guys caught a call, and
Yeah,
we'd be
and
out helping truck checks and shit, trying to just hang out with our friends.
man, it's at least thankfully at our station. I don't know that every station has that, and has over the years. Then it goes ebbs and flows, right? But at Station Two, I've always had really good camaraderie with the guys on either side, shifts on either side, to the point that we sit down and, like you said, we visit for an hour. When you come on shift, they hang out for an hour. When I leave shift, I'm there for another hour, drinking coffee and telling stories, and that's
Those are
that.
the best part. Those are the best part of the day. I
It
mean, you're
is.
not just hanging out with your crew. You get to hang out with the guys that you don't normally get to hang out with, unless you like catch an overtime shift or do a swap or something like that.
Yeah. And those
Yeah,
are
it's
probably some of
those
the
are the fun
biggest
times.
things I miss.
Yeah.
Talk about things I miss from the fire service. It's not the calls. It's not I miss the camaraderie of the coming in the morning, getting that cup of coffee, shitty as it might be or good as it
Yeah.
might be, and just the storytelling and the jaw jacking, sitting on the front apron, sitting on the bumper of the truck, and I'm hearing the stories from the shift before, or I'm telling the stories from the shift that I'm just leaving. It's those little things that you miss about that I miss about it. That I don't have that anymore. I don't go somewhere. I need to go back and hang out more at the station from time to time and just have a cup of
Cook them
coffee with
boys
the
a
guys.
dinner,
But
man.
yeah, go have some dinner. But yeah, those are the things, the smells of the station, the smells of a station after a long night. The guys before you caught a job or something, and the reeks of fire. There's dirty gear hanging everywhere. People cleaning hose, and the smells and the sounds and the feels, and then the stories of, yeah, you should have seen it, man. Bailed through that window, or went right through, fought the dragon, whatever. You get all those stories, and not only do you hear them, but you tell them when you're leaving shift too. You
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
everybody about all your exciting calls from the shift before, and those are the things I miss. I told my wife right whenever, like they cut me off like the day I retired, because we get all the calls on our phone, right? It would populate on my phone, so I'd see what I for at least the last couple of years we've had it so that you could see every time a call dropped, it dropped on your phone. So no matter whether you were on shift or off shift, you knew what was going on all the time, all over town, and you could see when something interesting popped up. You're like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. They shut that shit off the day I walked out of my retirement day, and then I'm like, I wonder what everybody's doing. I start thinking, I hear sirens, and I'm like, now I'm just one of the looky loos like everybody else, not knowing what's going on. I don't hear all the stories. I don't know the cool stuff that's happened.
So
That's
did
taken
you
some
guys
adjustment.
did your because you spent a lot of time at Station Two.
Most of my career, I spent 20 years there. I was in for 25, and my first 5 years I was at Station One, then Station Three, and then when I promoted, I worked some at Station Two, but when I promoted to captain, the spot was on the truck at Station Two. So I showed up there on the truck, and then I spent my whole career there. My whole captain's career, my 20 years as a captain, I spent on
That's
the truck.
crazy. Did you have any good traditions that you like to do at Station Two, or any kind of superstitions that you guys had with you or with your crew that you had at the time?
Back in the day, we would drink cherry Pepsi because we thought it brought fires. That was a thing for a while, and it did. It was weird because, like, and no one drank Pepsi. No one ever drank. But if you'd get a cherry Pepsi, you could guarantee we were going to catch a fire. And so that's one of those weird things, kind of a superstition thing. Smoke a cigar after a good fire. That was kind of one of the things that was fun to do, that we used to do uh, before the politicians got onto us too much for smoking, at the station. I don't know. I'm not a super superstitious guy, so I didn't have too much of that.
All right.
Sorry, my
Okay.
phone was squawking at me.
So, did you have a? Did you ever have a shift that at the time went completely fucking sideways, but in at the end of that call somehow turned out Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of, I had a couple of multiple fire shifts that were the ones that were completely, because as you know, if you fight a long, hard fire and you spend, I'm not talking about that you show up and 30 minutes later you're packed up and going, but one of those where you're 5, 6 hours in and you catch another call a couple hours after that and you're wiped already. You're wiped from your first run through the mill, and now you got to go back and do that again. Those were those were tough days. That in the end, when you look back on it, you go, "That was fun. I had a great time. That was fun." I had I had a plane crash into a storage building. Oddly enough, when I was an early captain then, had only been a captain a couple of years maybe, and we had a plane, terrible weather, crashed into the storage units over by, it would have been over kind of by Ripley's.
Okay.
It's kind of back off 165 there. And we get this. And of course, this is after 9/11, right? So you get the dispatcher that comes on and just is screaming. There's a passenger plane, the commercial, they called it a commercial plane, crashed into a hotel. That's what we got. And so you're like, holy shit. Holy shit. I'm sitting at my desk, and this is back when we were 2 men in a truck, right? We had 3-man crews, but we could run 2 guys at Station 2. So it was me and an engineer at Station 2. I'm sitting at my desk and I'm like, what'd they say? They said a commercial plane crashed into a hotel. Well, it wasn't that. It was a smaller plane, but it crashed into some storage units. So, but that was what came out. The call came out. Rainy, foggy, gnarly, and it was early in the shift, like 9 o'clock in the morning, maybe. Yeah, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't remember. And we were there for, when we get there, you can't see anything on the way there because the rain, the fog, the nasty. We get there and there's just this raging fire everywhere. We're limited manpower. I'm pulling hoses, trying to find the location of where the plane might be, by pushing through fire and crap that I didn't even know what I was in. I'm just wandering, and I'm by myself in the beginning. I had an engineer and me. So I had a guy pumping the truck, and I'm dragging a hose through all this, trying to find this aircraft. You know, that was one of those days that you're like, it just, everything went to hell. And we were there 12, 14 hours on that call. And then at the end of it, you go, well, I made it through that. That's probably one of those. I don't imagine I'll live through another one of those calls like that. That's a once in a lifetime call, right? And I happened to catch it early in my career, one of those. So, but we survived, and the folks in the aircraft did not survive. There was 4 fatalities, I think, in the aircraft. And in fact, I was on the front page of the Kansas City Star. I've still got that newspaper around here somewhere. There was a Kansas City Star news reporter down there, and they took a photograph of us. It was myself, Chief Novak, which I don't remember what he was at the time, but he was there as me, and then another, Brian Rinke, I think was the other one. And we're standing at this wreck. Of course, we got the fire out. We're standing at this wreckage, and we look like we've just battled hell, and we have. And you're in your gear and you're packing, you're just covered in crap, and you're standing there, and we're just kind of trying to figure out what's happened here. And they took that photograph, and we were on the front page of the Kansas City Star the next day. I was like, holy cow, we made the news, boys.
So my last question, I usually only save for my military guest.
Hmm.
But since you're recently retired, I want to ask you the same thing. And I want to ask you how you look back on your service. Is it a pride thing? Is it nostalgia? Is it something completely different?
I would say that it's all of that. I'm very proud of what I've been able to do over the years. There's times that I didn't realize it. When you're doing it, it's just, that's part of your job, right? But once you get to the end of that career and you look back, you go, I hope, I think I made a difference, and I made a difference in people's lives. There's been good days and there's been bad days, but in the end, we made it through the end, and we meant something. We did something, and I think there's folks out there that are better for what we did than if we had not been there to do it. And so I'm very proud of that. Nostalgia wise, I'm proud to have come through the fire service from I've seen so much change in the fire service from the time
Right.
I started. Really, that first air pack I wore was in 1995. So that went from 95 to 2025, 26. So that was a 30-year span that I was involved in fire service, 25 with Branson. And I saw so much change, whether it be how we approach doing things, safer ways to do things. It, I found we've saved more lives due to technology. I mean, there's just been so much that's changed. And even in our town, in Branson, we went from this tiny, it was akin to a volunteer fire department, really, when I started there. It was, to me, when we had like 12, 15 volunteers there.
Right. Yeah.
And we went from that to really a professional, and what I'd like to say, a professional department. And I like to feel that I was a part of that. I was a part of that development of the department to get to that professional level. I know that I was, and I can go back to myself, Dave Etz, and Brian Rinke. We were a crew. Whenever I came to the truck, no one gave a squat about truck work. They didn't even know what truck work was, right? So that was a thing that was not in the culture of Branson Fire. They had a ladder truck by happenstance. They treated it just like any other engine. It's just an engine with a ladder on top. You've heard that your whole
Yeah.
fucking life
Oh
in the
yeah.
fire service, I know. Just an engine with a ladder on top. But we made it a point to go, it's not. We need to have some specialized skills here. There's a lot of things that truck companies do that everybody else don't have to do. That I know we're small enough that everyone needs to do everything, right? But we made it a point to make sure that we trained hard and got the knowledge to be good truck guys and to know what a truck guy was. And I go back to truck academies I went to. I learned from dudes that were, New York City truck captains for their whole lives, 30-year veterans. Those were the guys that taught me, and those were and so I like to think that we gathered so much knowledge and we tried to bring it back and instill it and make it to where that is what we are. We are a truck company in Branson, Missouri, and we do truck work. And, you know, quite frankly, you go, we maybe are a little better than other people because I think we study our craft more than pulling a hose to the front door and making a push, right? If you take a truck academy, one of those old salty fucking big city truck guys, the first thing they're going to tell you is that what's the engine company's job to do is to pull hose and spray water on the fire. And what's the truck company's job to do? Everything else on the fire ground. It's the truck company's job to do every single thing else on the fire ground, whether that be ventilation, whether that be softening the structure, whether that be search and rescue, whether that be it's we have to do everything, including the hose sometimes. Whereas on the engine, they just focus on the get water on the
Hey,
fire, get
sometimes
water on the fire.
sometimes the hose monkeys don't know where the fire is until we tell them where it is.
I feel proud that I was a part of developing that culture in Branson. I think I was. I like to think I was, and and we do have that culture in Branson now, and you know that because you were there, you were on the truck, and you
Absolutely.
know that it's a culture thing, and
Well, yeah.
truck guys look at themselves different than engine guys, and you know
I
that.
made a meme one time, and I sent it to everybody. I'll have to send it to you. It's hilarious, and it's got like Dwight Goodman from Dodgeball. It's like a truck
Yeah,
do. We're
yeah.
better than you, and we know it. No, that's a good answer. I like that. Yeah, just cause I've never asked anybody outside of the military that question.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those things you just like I said on my retirement, I said I just hope that I left this place better than it was when I got here. I hope
Right.
that I had a part in making it better than it was, and I really feel I do. I saw a lot of change, whether that be unionization, whether that be technology, whether that be safety aspects. I've been a part of so much of it going
Right.
through that I take some ownership in that. That I was there And I wasn't just a bystander. I was actively participating in changing the culture, and tried to actively participate and change the culture. And I think we succeeded. So I'm proud of that.
I like it. I like it. Well, that's the last question I got for you tonight, Mike. I really appreciate you hanging out with me.
I appreciate it,
Uh,
man. I miss you,
this
brother.
this has been good. I miss you too, man. This has been fun. This has been good. So yeah, that's all I got for you right now, dude.
All right. Well, come down. You'll have to, when you're down sometime, you'll have to, we'll get together and I'll bring you over to see my arsenal a little bit. It's
Oh,
grown
I know all
substantially.
about that arsenal. I know all about it.